Ho ho ho! Welcome to VID-O-RAMA, where we remember the VHS releases of the past in graphic detail. My name's Rod Jones, and today I'll be painting a tribute to that 1984 Christmas classic, Gremlins. Please forgive the mess, it's a little disorganised here at the moment. I'm between studios. I've just recently moved into the house that I lived in back in the early 80s. And it was in this very house that my mother once gifted me the Gremlins read-along storybook. Filled with superb pictures from the film, I was obsessed with Gremlins and I was swept along with all the hype to the movie. And so I listened to the story cassettes read by Tom Baker over and over.
Billy was just in time to hear the splash. Within seconds, the water was frothing and churning. It turned a virulent green, and from the depths came a rumble that grew louder and louder. The creature was multiplying. Billy froze in horror. Then he grabbed Gizmo and ran for his life.
Regular viewers of the channel will recall that I did actually paint a tribute to Gremlins last Christmas, but I wasn't happy with it. Something was amiss. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But when I painted the tributes to Gremlins 2 back in June for our crossover with Stephen Monkey Mason
Bottle Lambrini
at Lonely Tree Entertainment, then I realised what it was. It needed more Gremlins. So because I can't leave things well alone, here is my tributes to Gremlins. Please forgive the reverb. That should hopefully stop once I have the studio in order. Right, new to the channel and have no idea what's going on? No problem. Each month I paint tributes to the movies that we rented on video back in the day. I start out by drawing a rough sketch, working out the layout and likenesses, and then once I'm happy with it, I then photocopy the sketch to thin card. I work in acrylic paint, and the three colours I'm using today are Mars Black, Titanium White and Leaf Green. I reapply the lines and add additional detail with pens. So, Gremlins. Not a whole lot that hasn't been said about this movie, truth be told. It was an instant classic on its release in 1984, and rightfully so. The movie brought Gremlins back into the public's consciousness, as they hadn't really been discussed since World War II. This film set a standard and a trend for small rubber monster movies that carried through the 80s and into the 90s. The movie was written by Chris Columbus. He would also go on to write Goonies and Young Sherlock Holmes, amongst others. As a director and producer, he has given us countless other great movies, such as Adventures in Babysitting, Mrs. Doubtfire, Bicentennial Man, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and The Chamber of Secrets. Not forgetting three other Christmas classics, of course, Home Alone 2, and Jingle All the Way. It's well reported that Gremlins was originally to be a much darker movie, somewhat influenced by the mice that infested Columbus's New York apartment during his time at NYU. He wrote Gremlins as a straightforward horror movie, and just by luck, Steven Spielberg, intrigued by the title, happened to read it and gave it the green light, but changes would have to be made. Gremlins was of course directed by Joe Dante. I've listed his credits before, and I'm sure you already know them. The Howling, Piranha, Explorers, Inner Space, The Burbs, and Matinee. His movies were a big deal to me growing up, and it all started with this movie. But it's a wonder that the movie was even made, with all the complicated shots and the prosthetic work that had to be done. Dante told issue 37 of Fangoria magazine that the movie, in which he described as a small-town character comedy during its first half and scary movie during its second, was very complicated, so much so that he thought the movie would take 5 years to make. I'm now adding smoke, using a method I covered in last month's Demon Wind painting video. A thin layer of paint is applied with the end of my finger. It creates a soft edge. Dante worked on the storyboards for Gremlins while working on the Twilight Zone movie. In the same Fangoria article, he explained that the gruesome aspects of the original script, the creatures having an insatiable appetite for human flesh, was quickly dropped in favour of making them mischievous, that they liked to do bad things and use technology against people. Steven Spielberg was the executive producer, and he also had a small cameo in the film, of course. He wasn't on set that much, he was working on Temple of Doom at the time, but he suggested a major change to the entire structure of the story concerning Gizmo. In the original script, Gizmo transformed into a gremlin, but Spielberg thought it best that Gizmo remain a mogwai. This changed the entire layout of the film, gave Gizmo more screen time, and led to the creation of this guy, Stripe. Frank Welker, the voice of everyone's childhood, provided the voice of Stripe and the Gremlins. Welker is one of the greats as far as cartoon voices. He's the voice of Fred Jones in Scooby-Doo, Megatron in Transformers, he's the voice of Jabberjaw, Dynomutt, and that's just naming 4. His resume could easily add another 20 minutes to this video. Howie Mandel was the voice of Gizmo on Frank Welker's recommendation. Mandel also played Maurice the monster in Little Monsters, which was released in 1989, and he also provided the voices for Animal and Skeeter in Muppet Babies. I wanted to have at least one gremlin looking Christmassy in this piece. Dante originally wanted the Gremlins to be stop motion, but the idea was soon dropped due to time constraints, although there is some stop motion in the film. They even considered Reese's Monkeys dressed as Gremlins before it was handed to the great Chris Walas. Walas, one of the pioneers of special effects, previously worked with Dante on Piranha and had worked on many other great movies: Raiders of the Lost Ark, Humanoids from the Deep, Return of the Jedi, House 2, Arachnophobia, The Fly, and he directed Fly 2. And he received an Academy Award for the makeup effects he created for The Fly. Walas told issue 38 of Fangoria magazine that he was waiting to hear from Michael Finnell about a possible creature from the Black Lagoon 3D remake at the time, but this fell through, and so he was offered the script for Gremlins instead. Walas read through the script and accepted the job as he thought it sounded like a fun project, but he admitted to not knowing how he was actually going to create the creatures. The look of the Gremlins are now universally recognised. It's a classic. It was loosely based on Chris Columbus's original sketches, but they were altered for practical puppeteering reasons. Long arms so they could throw things and so forth. But Walas wanted both Mogwai and Gremlin to retain a similar physical aspect so that you knew they were one in the same animal. The ears were especially important as they helped express the creature's mood. Go back and watch the movie and you'll notice just how expressive the ears are. I'm working on the cocoons now. For this image, yes, I wanted it to pair up with the Gremlins 2 tribute, but really I wanted it to show the change from Mogwai to Gremlin. So we have Gizmo appearing from the box. He multiplies, they eat after midnight, they become cocoons and emerge as Gremlins, represented in this mushroom cloud effect. I wanted to feature as many Gremlins as possible, and I wanted them to represent scenes in the movie. So we have the kitchen being represented along with Dory's Tavern and the cinema. I'll let you count how many Gremlins feature. Let me know how many you counted in the comments. Side note, the movie also features a cameo from one of my own personal heroes, Chuck Jones, the legendary American animator and filmmaker. He's the cartoonist best known for his work on the Warner Brothers and Looney Tunes shorts, responsible for many greats that we all know and love. Well, the man called Mr. Jones that Billy is showing his sketch of Mrs. Deagle to in Dory's Tavern, that's him. He then directed the Bugs and Daffy sequence at the start of Gremlins 2. I've made my fondness of this movie growing up very clear, and yet I didn't actually get to see it on its original release. Despite the movie being a critical and commercial success, the film did receive some flack for its violence and scary scenes, in what was seemingly aimed at kids. Similar complaints were also made by Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom at the time, and so Spielberg, who didn't want the movies to be rated R, suggested to the Motion Picture Association of America alter its rating system, in which it did, introducing the new PG-13 rating. Gremlins was also submitted to the British Board of Film Classification here in the UK by the film's distributor, Columbia EMI Warner, hoping for a similar PG certificate that it had received in the US, but the BBFC examiners weren't having any of it. They took umbrage with scenes involving gremlins and kitchen appliances, and seeing recognisable authority figures such as teachers and mothers being attacked. And Kate's infamous Christmas tale sequence didn't help matters either, and so they issued it with a 15 certificate. So the kids that had seen the trailers during the ad breaks during Children's ITV, had the toys waiting for them under the Christmas tree, collected the stickers and read the books, were not actually allowed to see the film itself. A curious time, but the UK was especially concerned about movie violence and video nasties and its effects on the nation's children at this time. The movie was eventually shown on television, but it was always heavily edited and cut, and so the only way to see it properly was on video. And that's what I did. Yeah, it unnerved me somewhat, but I loved it. Everyone has their own traditions at Christmas, and for me, it's not Christmas until Mrs. Deagle is fired out that window. Everyone loves the Mogwais, and they're fun to draw. I dry brush the edges with the thin layer of paint to create that fluffy effect. Extra white dots are added to the eyes to highlight the cuteness. Wayless originally wanted the Mogwai to be much bigger, but Dante insisted that they be small and cute, and so a small, complicated mechanical puppet, prone to breaking, had to be created, with various detachable faces for different expressions. Gizmo's fur design was at the request of Spielberg. Spielberg had 2 King Charles Cavalier Spaniels at the time, and he asked if they would make the Mogwai look like his dogs, and so Gizmo was given that Blenheim fur look. It wasn't an easy movie to work on, but credit to all concerned, they made these creatures seem real. Wayless made it clear in interviews that the effects achieved in this movie were very much a team effort. They did an amazing job, shaping many a childhood, mine included. Thank you for joining me today and keeping me company. I hope that was of interest to you. If you enjoyed today's painting, let me know in the comments or give the video a thumbs up. Perhaps you'll even consider subscribing. It helps support the channel and my work. And what could be more festive than ringing that bell? So until next year, I hope you'll stay safe, and I wish you all a very Merry Christmas.
Do you hear what I hear?